Senator Curtis. Senator Murphy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. Before I ask my questions, I just ask that after this hearing, you go back and reconsider a claim that you made in your opening statement. It would certainly shock Americans to hear that only 12% of our foreign aid reaches recipients, needy recipients on the ground, the people who need the help. That is not actually an accurate number. That is the amount of our aid that goes directly to local groups on the ground. But as you know, most of our aid runs through bigger international organizations like Save the Children. Those entities are getting somewhere around 80–85% of the aid we give them directly to recipients on the ground. And so I think what you've done to shutter USAID is illegal, but I also think it's bad policy, and I do think it's important for us to all be operating with the same set of facts. And the fact is not that only 12% of taxpayer dollars are ending up in the hands of the people who really need it on the ground. Mr. Secretary, I wanted to talk to you about the president's personal business interests. During his first term, he made the decision to not enter into any new business deals during his presidency, that Trump-affiliated businesses would not enter into any foreign business arrangements. And that made sense because obviously it can be confusing for foreign governments to know how to try to win favor with the U.S. government if they have one route, making concessions that are good for U.S. national security, and they also have another route, which is perhaps helping the president's business interests. The president obviously changed that policy, and in this administration, his business interests are announcing new agreements and new investments into those business interests by foreign governments. And I think it stands to reason that creates a real problem for foreign policy, and it creates a problem for foreign governments in which they don't exactly know what the best way is to try to get on good terms with the U.S. government and with the White House. Is it to do what's right for American national security, or might it also be to do a business deal with the President of the United States or the entities that he controls? Just to clarify, when the President's businesses are engaged in negotiations, for instance, with the UAE on their stablecoin business, there was this big investment announced recently. You are not part of those negotiations. Those are being done by the president's family or those representing the president's business.
Yeah, I'm not aware the president's involved in managing any business. He's other than the presidency of the United States. His family is allowed to make business deals. They continue to operate the enterprises that his family ran. I also don't accept the notion that these deals, for example, in Saudi Arabia or the UAE or Qatar, had anything to do with the president. For example, the Qatar bought $200 billion worth of airplanes from Boeing. The president's not as far as I know, not a shareholder, certainly doesn't own Boeing. So the overwhelming, if you look at the deals that were structured, they were involved in investments in the United States. That's the deals he signed, and or investments in, for example, the UAE or Saudi Arabia involving artificial intelligence.
UAE did announce a massive investment in World Liberty Financial, and World Liberty Financial is controlled by the president. And the president does actively engage in these businesses. He uses his social media to market the businesses that are being run by his family. I mean, just go on to his social media feed and you will see him marketing his meme coins. So that is the president of the United States. That is not his son's doing.
But that, just to be clear, that was not part of this. That was not an announcement as part of this trade visit that was conducted into the Middle East.
Well, whether or not it was made during the time the president was there are obviously business deals being done between Trump entities and these countries. Let me ask you about the one that is probably most confusing to this committee, which is the planned gift of a plane to either the United States government or the president. Is it your understanding that this luxury plane that Qatar has offered the president, and the president has announced he is willing to accept, is a gift to the United States government, or is it a gift ultimately to the president himself that he can use in his library?
Well, you'd have to talk to the Department of Defense, because this is a replacement or at least a temporary bridge plane for Air Force One, the new Air Force One, which is way off its delivery schedule. And so that would have to be with the Air Force. They operate Air Force One. My understanding of it basically has been from the very beginning that this is a plane that was identified after talking to Boeing about what other planes around the world would fit the bill that are out there that could be used now. They identified the ones the Qataris had as an opportunity for one, and as a result, or the UAE had that as opportunity for one, and that's how that deal was.
And it's not your understanding that the plane ultimately will belong to the president or to the president's library after.
Well, I'm not involved at that level of it. I've never heard that before. What I've heard is that plane will replace Air Force One, which is an Air Force plane.
Let me ask you about the dinner that's happening this Thursday night. The president has offered access to him to the 200 top purchasers of his meme coin. Reports are that maybe about half or more of those individuals who will be meeting with him, many in a VIP reception, are foreigners. Do you have a list of those foreign individuals who will be meeting with the president?
I don't. I don't know anything about. I didn't even know there was a dinner on Thursday night, so I'm not sure what you're referring to.
So you don't know whether any of the foreign individuals who are going to be meeting with the president this Thursday night, for instance, are on our list of sanctioned individuals, or whether any of those individuals have connections to, let's say, terrorist organizations abroad?
Well, I think if they had terrorist links, the Department of Homeland Security probably would not have allowed them into the country. But again, I don't even know there is a dinner on Thursday. You're asking me about something I don't know about.
Well, but listen, this is a dinner that the president is having. It is likely going to involve some very significant foreign interests. You have to be pretty wealthy in order to be able to get inside this dinner. Isn't that a relevant question for the Secretary of State?
Yeah, I'm not the social
Which foreign
secretary,
interests
so.
are going to be speaking to the president? I mean, it's kind of naive to believe that they aren't going to be in that room talking about national security matters.
Well, I don't think that that's the case at all, because I would be aware if it was the case. The truth of the matter is I interact with government officials and others in governments of other countries. That's what I don't say. You're asking me about a dinner I don't know anything about. I can't answer you because I don't know anything about this dinner. It's the first I heard of it. Like I said, I don't keep the president's social schedule. It's not on my phone. It's not in my pocket. I don't even know. I can't comment on a dinner I know nothing about.
Yeah, I think that represents a real problem for this committee, because there is clearly a way around the State Department for foreign individuals of significant influence and wealth to be able to directly lobby the president of the United States.
But I don't think
your
that's
answer
fair.
is that you don't know this is happening.
Well, I don't know that there's
that
a dinner.
in and of itself is.
I don't know that there's a dinner, and I don't know what the guest list is. But I can tell you, I've run into the president of FIFA from the World Cup. He's here all the time. I see him. He's a private individual. It's not a government entity, and he's met with the president and is friendly with the president. He doesn't have to go through me to meet with the president. The president has relationships and friends and people he's known for a long time. Some of them are foreigners. That's not unusual.
Yeah,
but you're asking me about a
for a
specific
long
dinner
time.
and
These are
implying
individuals
nefarious
who just
impact.
bought their
I
way
can't
into
comment on a
meeting
on
with
a
the
dinner.
president. I think you should probably endeavor to get your hands on the list to make sure that there aren't individuals there who are perhaps contravening national security interests that the
Well, I don't
Department
think
of
I don't
State
have any
is
concern about that.
prioritizing.
Ultimately, I don't have any concern that the president having dinner with someone is going to contravene the national security of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Merkley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and greetings, Secretary Rubio. And it was a pleasure to work with you when you were in your Senate capacity on a number of human rights issues related to China, Taiwan, Tibet, Hong Kong, and certainly the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which I think is a standard and a strategy I hope will spread to other countries to reject goods made by slave labor in China. Today, however, I want to wrestle a bit with another what I consider to be a humanitarian tragedy, the conditions in Gaza. I very much supported Israel going after Hamas following October 7th, but we are now well over a year and a half into this, and there's a new phase of events, which I'll try to summarize. 6 months ago, Finance Minister Smotrich said Israel should thin the population through voluntary migration. He also used the term encouraged migration. These terms are considered a euphemism for forced displacement. And the strategies of forced migration are food denial, the demolition of homes so that there's no place to return to, and driving people from one area in the Gaza Strip south to the southern side. Then there is a new plan called Operation Gideon's Chariot, mass call-up of troops in Israel. And Netanyahu said a few days ago, he said, we're going to take over all the areas of the Gaza Strip. By the way, on that forced displacement or the demolition of homes, I want to put up a chart to accentuate the point. This is satellite images done by the New York Times that show before the war, the detailed homes, mass damage before the ceasefire, and then since the ceasefire, absolutely, the entire neighborhood turned to rubble. There's just basically nothing left that is habitable. So I wanted to just make the point that it's not some theory about the strategy. The strategy is being implemented and implemented very aggressively and effectively. But let me return to the issue of food denial. The Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs estimated that in February, 2,000 children were admitted for treatment of acute malnutrition. I was thinking about the strips that are used. They're called MUAC strips, mid-upper arm circumference. It's basically a measure of the bicep. And I saw them I went to areas that were under starvation in Africa, and I saw these being used, and you'd see a child, and you would think this child is just maybe 2 years old, and they'd be 5 years old, and their arms as thin as toothpicks. And I was struck when a UN health representative returned and said, and I quote, "I've seen them in the wards," referring to the hospital wards, "a child of 5 years old, and I thought he was 2 and a half. So Ulcha said 2,000 children, acute malnutrition. That's a nice way of saying we're starving. In March, there were 36 children admitted for acute malnutrition. The denial of food the blockade began March 2nd, so the numbers are undoubtedly up much higher in April and now into May. The World Health Organization reported a couple days ago that 57 children had died from the effects of malnutrition. That blockade shows signs of being changed. Netanyahu has made some public comments. He said, "We will not stand by." Let's see. "We cannot reach a point of starvation for practical and diplomatic reasons." He went on to say that mass starvation is a red line that could cost Israel support from the U.S. He didn't say it was a humanitarian problem, but support from the U.S. And yesterday, 5 trucks went in, and there's a plan to get up to 100 trucks. But 5 trucks is 1% of the amount needed for daily food supplements, and 100 trucks is still only 20% in an area that's already extremely hungry. This has led Canada, France, and Britain to say we cannot stand by while the Netanyahu government pursues these egregious actions. The level of human suffering is intolerable. So I guess my question here is the U.S. is a very close ally to Israel, both in military, security support, certainly in economic support. Is the administration conveying to the Netanyahu government that encouraging migration through food denial is an unacceptable strategy?
Well, let me say I won't discuss, obviously, for many different reasons, what we share with our partners and allies. But I will walk you through some of the steps you've rightly outlined, what has happened over the last...
Just not too long a speech, because I'm really trying to get where our administration is standing.
Well, I'm still trying to get the Senate out of me, so I still talk longer than I should,
Yeah, well,
so I'll be more brief.
I'm going to have to reclaim some time, but go ahead, try to keep it very...
Well, you want me to answer?
I do want you to answer, but hopefully answering the question is pretty simple. Does the U.S. consider this an acceptable strategy of encouraging migration?
Well, I would say that we were pleased and to see that aid is starting to flow in again. I understand your point that it's not in sufficient amounts, but we were pleased to see that decision was made. I understand another 100 trucks are behind that and maybe more in the next few days. I'll also tell you that I met in Rome 3 days ago with the World Food Program to walk through some of the ideas and plans they had for distribution on the ground. And ultimately, the answer here is for this to end, hopefully with the elimination of Hamas, because the people of Gaza deserve a more prosperous, peaceful future, which they'll never have as long as Hamas exists.
Well, thank you. That was brief and well done. Thank you. So then the second part of this is the systematic destruction of remaining homes as a way to make it impossible for people to stay in Gaza. Does the U.S. discourage that? Is it discouraging the Netanyahu government from continuing that strategy?
Well, we don't view that that's their strategy. We understand that they are targeting elements of Hamas, is what they have claimed and said to us and to the world, that they believe that they need to root out the remaining elements of Hamas, who, by the way, have been an impediment to multiple ceasefires that I know have been negotiated and even agreed upon by Hamas external and then vetoed by Hamas internal.
Is the U.S., it sounds like then, therefore, we're not concerned about that, or you characterize it differently. There has been reports of the administration working behind the scenes to develop a plan to help deport Gazans to Libya. Have you been involved in any discussions related to deporting people from Gaza, Palestinians in
No.
Gaza, to Libya?
No, there's no deportation. What we have talked to some nations about is if someone voluntarily and willingly says, I want to go somewhere else for some period of time because I'm sick, because my children need to go to school or what have you, are there countries in the region willing to accept them for some period of time? But those would be voluntary decisions by individuals.
Well, if there are voluntary decisions because there is no clean water, there is no food, and bombing is all around you, is that really a voluntary decision?
Well, ultimately, that's the point, right? And that is you don't want people trapped there. They may want to come back. They may want to live there in the future, but right now they can't. And if there's some nation willing to accept them in the interim period, yes, we've asked countries preliminarily whether they would be open to accepting people, not as a permanent situation, but as a bridge towards reconstruction.
Does that include Libya?
I'm not aware of Libya.
Thank you. I will just summarize since my time is up. I think the U.S. has a moral responsibility to fiercely convey to the Netanyahu government that using food as an instrument of war is unacceptable. It's a violation of international humanitarian law. It's mass punishment. We have now children who are dying, and while Netanyahu has said he doesn't want to see mass starvation, he's drawing the line at mass starvation, but we're seeing real starvation right now, and I think we owe it to our connection and our close relationship to Israel to powerfully convey the importance of not just 5 trucks a day like yesterday or 100 trucks a day, but enough food to end the starvation. Is that a policy you can get behind?
To ultimately rebuild and provide people a future in Gaza?
To get behind enough trucks to end the starvation.
Yeah, we've made that point. Look, I think ultimately, I don't think you would have seen the events of the last couple of days without our engagement, the engagement of others. Israel remains a strong ally. We're supportive. We understand why, for their security, Hamas cannot exist. We are also very happy to see that they have allowed aid to begin to flow, and we hope that that will continue.
Concluding comment, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your tolerance. It's an important topic. Netanyahu did say he was responding to remarks and pressure from American politicians. I assume that's the administration saying that America cannot accept mass starvation, but I would encourage you to push not for 5 or 100 trucks, but enough food to end the fact that children are starving and adults are starving, innocents are starving. Our close relationship, we need to end it.
Senator McCormick.